The Galactic Council chamber floated in the void between stars, a massive structure of crystalline metal that housed representatives from 47 civilized species. Today they gathered to discuss the newest discovery, humanity. Ambassador Zekthor of the Vraxian Empire stood before the assembled council. His 4 eyes gleamed with amusement as holographic images of Earth's primitive spacecraft filled the air. The other ambassadors chittered, clicked, and hummed their laughter. "These creatures," Zekthor announced, his translator converting his words into 47 languages simultaneously, "have barely left their home planet. They use chemical propulsion." Chemical. They still believe fusion reactors are advanced technology. The council chamber erupted in what could only be described as mockery. The Korean ambassador, a being of pure energy contained in a magnetic field, pulsed with colors that indicated profound amusement. The ThursdayCon delegation, massive insectoids from the Andromeda sector, rubbed their mandibles together in their equivalent of laughter. "They have only one planet," continued Zekthor. "One. And they have divided it into competing factions. They actually wage war against themselves." More laughter echoed through the chamber. High Chancellor Mortine, an ancient being from the Ascended Collective, raised one crystalline hand for silence. His species had achieved spaceflight 10,000 years ago. They had seen countless primitive species rise and fall. "Nevertheless," Mortine said, his voice carrying the weight of millennia, "the protocols must be followed. We shall send the standard contact fleet. Assess their technology. Offer them membership as a protectorate species, if they prove manageable. And if they refuse?" asked the Korean ambassador. Mortine's expression remained neutral. "Then we follow the compact. Primitive species who refuse guidance must be isolated. We will establish a quarantine zone around their system. For their own protection, of course." In the back of the chamber, one observer remained silent. Commander Thane of the Rixian hegemony watched the proceedings with interest. His species had built their empire through conquest, not diplomacy. They had learned long ago that underestimating an opponent, any opponent, was the first step toward defeat. He studied the human vessels in the hologram. Crude, yes. Primitive, certainly. But there was something in their design that intrigued him. Efficiency. Every component served a purpose. No wasted space. No decorative elements. These were ships built by beings who understood that resources were limited and survival was paramount. Thane tapped a claw against his command tablet, filing away this observation. His masters would want to know about this new species. The hegemony was always looking for potential threats, or opportunities. 3 weeks later, the contact fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system. Admiral Kreven commanded the fleet from his flagship, the Eternal Glory. 50 vessels of various sizes accompanied him, each one representing different council species. It was meant to be impressive. Overwhelming. A show of the galaxy's united power. They transmitted the standard greeting on all frequencies in mathematics and basic physics. The universal language. Within hours they received a response. "This is Earth Defense Command," came the translated message. "We acknowledge your presence. Welcome to our system. Please state your intentions." The communication officers aboard the Eternal Glory exchanged amused glances. Earth Defense Command. As if these primitives could defend anything against the might of the Galactic Council. Admiral Kreven composed his response carefully. "We represent the Galactic Council, a union of 47 civilized species. We extend the hand of friendship and offer you membership as a protectorate race. You will receive technology, guidance, and protection. In return, you will submit to council authority and accept our governance." The response took longer this time. 6 hours of silence. When Earth finally replied, the message was simple. "We appreciate the offer, but we must respectfully decline. Humanity governs itself. However, we welcome diplomatic relations on equal terms." The bridge of the Eternal Glory fell silent. "Equal terms?" Kreven repeated, his voice dripping with disbelief. "They believe they can negotiate with us as equals?" His tactical officer pulled up a comparison chart. One Earth destroyer massed approximately 4,000 tons. The Eternal Glory alone displaced 5 million tons. The entire Earth fleet, gathered near their moon, consisted of perhaps 200 vessels. The contact fleet numbered 50, but each one was more powerful than anything humanity had ever built. "Admiral," his communications officer said hesitantly, "the humans are taking an interesting position. They've moved their fleet into a defensive formation around their moon. They're not retreating, but they're also not advancing." Kreven studied the tactical display. The humans had arranged their ships in overlapping fields of fire, protecting what appeared to be civilian installations on the lunar surface. It was actually a competent defensive strategy for primitives. Send a follow-up message, Kreven ordered. Make it clear that refusal is not an option. They have 48 hours to accept our terms, or face the consequences. What the Admiral didn't know was that Earth had been preparing for this moment for 3 years. 3 years earlier, the radio telescopes at the Arecibo Observatory had detected something impossible. A signal. Not random cosmic noise, but a deliberate transmission in mathematical sequences that no natural phenomenon could create. Dr. Sarah Chen had been the first to confirm it. She had spent 72 hours without sleep, checking and rechecking the data. When she finally reported her findings to the director of NASA, her hands had been shaking. "We're not alone," she had whispered. "And they know we're here." The governments of Earth had moved with surprising unity. For once, the old divisions seemed petty in the face of a larger truth. If aliens existed and could communicate across light years, they would eventually come to Earth. The question was whether humanity would be ready. General Marcus Stone had been appointed to lead the newly created Earth Defense Initiative. He was a man who had seen combat on 4 continents, who had studied every major military conflict in human history. He understood one fundamental truth: wars were won not by the strongest but by the smartest. "We have 3 advantages," Stone had told the assembled leaders at the first EDI summit. "First, this is our home system. We know every asteroid, every gravitational well, every orbital path. Second, they don't know what we're capable of. Third, and most important, we have something to fight for. Every human on this planet." The preparation had been intense. Military budgets worldwide had been redirected. Scientists and engineers had worked around the clock. New weapons had been conceived, built, and tested in absolute secrecy. The greatest innovation had come from Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a theoretical physicist who had proposed what she called relativistic kill missiles. The concept was simple but devastating. Take a small object, accelerate it to a significant fraction of light speed, and let physics do the rest. At those velocities, even a softball-sized mass carried the kinetic energy of a nuclear weapon. "The aliens will expect lasers, missiles, explosive warheads," Dr. Tanaka had explained. "They won't expect us to weaponize velocity itself." Now, as the Galactic Council's ultimatum expired, General Stone stood in the command center buried beneath Cheyenne Mountain. Around him, holographic displays showed the tactical situation. The alien fleet held position at the edge of the solar system, near Neptune's orbit. Earth's fleet, publicly visible near the moon, maintained their defensive stance. What the aliens didn't know was that humanity had built a second fleet. Smaller vessels, almost invisible, scattered throughout the solar system. Each one carried a payload of RK missiles and enough fuel for one mission. Captain Jennifer Hayes commanded one of these stealth ships, the Valkyrie. She and her crew of 12 floated in the darkness between Mars and Jupiter, waiting. They had been on silent running for 6 weeks, conserving power, barely breathing it seemed. Their ship was coated in radar-absorbing materials and ran on minimal power. To any alien sensors, they were just another piece of space debris. "Captain," her sensor officer whispered, though there was no need for quiet in space. "The deadline has passed. The alien fleet is moving. Heading toward Earth." Hayes nodded. She had expected this. According to the intelligence briefings, the aliens would make a show of force. Move the fleet toward Earth, demonstrate their superior technology, and expect humanity to crumble in fear. They didn't understand humans at all. "All stations, battle stations," Hayes ordered. "Prepare RK missiles for launch. Target solutions on the flagship and the 3 largest vessels. Wait for my command." Throughout the solar system, 17 other stealth ships received the same orders. Each one moved into position, aligning their weapons with predetermined targets. On the Eternal Glory, Admiral Kreven watched as his fleet entered Earth's outer system. The primitive human ships near the moon hadn't moved. They maintained their defensive posture, as if a few hundred small vessels could stop the might of the Galactic Council. "Scan the system," Kreven ordered. "I want to know the position of every human vessel." "Sensors show the human fleet near their moon, Admiral. No other significant contacts. Some civilian traffic between Earth and Mars, merchant vessels most likely. Nothing that poses a threat." Kreven allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The humans would surrender. They would have to. Any species intelligent enough to develop spaceflight was intelligent enough to recognize when they were outmatched. "Open a channel to the human leadership," he commanded. "It's time to end this foolishness." General Stone's face appeared on the main view screen. He looked calm, almost relaxed. That should have been Creven's first warning. "Admiral," Stone said, "I'll give you one chance. Turn your fleet around and leave our system. We can discuss diplomatic relations later, under different circumstances." The bridge of the Eternal Glory erupted in laughter. "A primitive telling them to retreat?" "General Stone," Creven replied, "you cannot possibly believe you can resist us. Your entire fleet wouldn't last 10 minutes against our weapons. Surrender now and we will be merciful." Stone's expression didn't change. "I'll take that as a no." He made a small gesture off-screen. Captain Hayes received the authorization code. 6 simple digits that meant everything had changed. War had come to humanity, but humanity had chosen to fight. "Launch missiles," she commanded. "Full spread, maximum acceleration." The Valkyries shuddered as electromagnetic rails fired 20 RK missiles into the void. Each projectile was the size of a baseball bat, made of tungsten carbide wrapped around a fusion thruster. They would accelerate for exactly 3 minutes, reaching 12% of light speed, then go ballistic. At that velocity they didn't need explosives. Mass and speed were the only weapons necessary. Throughout the solar system, 17 other ships fired. 340 relativistic kill missiles screamed through space toward the alien fleet. Aboard the Eternal Glory, the tactical officer noticed something strange. Multiple small contacts, accelerating at impossible rates from seemingly empty space. "Admiral, I'm detecting." The sensor board exploded with warnings. Alarms screamed. The holographic display lit up with hundreds of incoming projectiles moving at velocities that should have been impossible for chemical-age primitives. "Evasive action," Creven shouted. "All ships, emergency thrust." But the physics were unforgiving. The alien ships were massive, designed for intimidation and carrying vast weapons systems. They were not designed for rapid maneuvering. Their engines, while powerful, couldn't change the vector of millions of tons in seconds. The first RK missile struck a Thursday-Con heavy cruiser amidships. At 12% of light speed, the tungsten projectile punched through shields that could withstand plasma cannons and laser batteries. The kinetic energy released was equivalent to 100 megatons. The cruiser simply vaporized. One moment it existed, the next there was only an expanding cloud of superheated gas. 3 more missiles hit the Eternal Glory's escort frigates. They died just as quickly. Creven watched in horror as his fleet was torn apart. Ships that had survived 100 battles, that carried crews from species that had conquered stars when humanity's ancestors were still in caves, died in blossoms of nuclear fire. "Return fire," he screamed. "Kill them all." But there was nothing to shoot at. The missiles had been fired from extreme range by ships the aliens couldn't detect. And now those ships had gone silent again, disappearing into the vast darkness. The alien fleet managed to destroy perhaps 50 of the incoming missiles with point defense lasers. But 300 remained. They had been aimed with precision, their targeting computed by Earth's best tactical AI systems. Every projectile found a target. When the attack ended, 37 of the contact fleet's 50 ships were gone. The survivors, including the Eternal Glory, were damaged and disoriented. "Casualty report," Creven demanded, his voice hollow. "Over 40,000 dead, sir. Multiple hull breaches across the fleet. The Kirene vessel is venting atmosphere. The Ascended collective ship has lost main power. 40,000 beings, dead in less than 5 minutes. At the hands of primitives who weren't supposed to have technology beyond chemical rockets." "Get me High Chancellor Mortine," Creven said quietly. "Tell him we have severely underestimated humanity." On Earth, General Stone allowed himself a small smile. The first engagement had gone exactly as planned. But he knew this was only the beginning. The aliens would retreat, regroup, and return with overwhelming force. That was what any logical species would do. "Order Phase 2, Stone said. All stealth ships are to relocate to secondary positions. Begin broadcasting our message on all frequencies." The message that went out to the alien fleet was simple, recorded by a dozen human leaders speaking in unity. "You came to our home system with weapons and demands. You threatened our families, our children, our world. We have shown you that we can defend ourselves. We do not want war, but we will not submit to slavery. Leave now and we can speak as equals. Attack again and we will show you what humans do to those who threaten everything we love." Ambassador Zekthor received the message aboard one of the surviving ships. He watched the footage of the human leaders, different species of the same planet, different colorations, different features, but all saying the same words. Unity, defiance, pride. He thought back to the council chamber, to their laughter at humanity's primitive technology. Chemical rockets they had mocked. Single-planet species they had sneered. None of them had asked the important question: what had humanity done with their limited technology? They had weaponized physics itself. They had built ships designed for stealth rather than glory. They had planned and prepared and waited. "Admiral," Zekthor said, entering the Eternal Glory's damaged bridge, "I recommend we withdraw." Immediately. Kriven turned to him, anger blazing in his eyes. "Withdraw? From primitives? The Council will never accept such humiliation." "The Council doesn't understand what we're facing," Zekthor replied. "These humans have been preparing for us. They knew we would come. They knew we would be arrogant. And they've been planning for this exact scenario." "How could they know?" Zekthor pulled up the data on human communications. "For 3 years they've been detecting our long-range transmissions. They've been listening to our broadcasts, learning our languages. They know our tactics, our strategies, our standard protocols." Kriven stared at the data. The implications were staggering. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in its 10,000-year history. 47 species, representing thousands of worlds and trillions of beings, gathered not in their usual chamber but via secure quantum communication. The mood was grim. High Chancellor Mortine materialized in holographic form at the center of the virtual assembly. His crystalline body, usually radiant with confidence, seemed dull. "The contact fleet has suffered catastrophic losses," he announced. 37 ships destroyed. 41,000 dead. The survivors have retreated beyond the human solar system. The chamber erupted. Not with laughter this time but with outrage and disbelief. "Impossible," shouted the ThursdayCon ambassador. "How can primitives destroy a council fleet?" "By not being as primitive as we assumed," Mortine replied coldly. He transmitted the tactical data to all members. Holographic representations of the battle played out before them. The invisible human ships. The relativistic missiles. The devastating precision. Commander Thane of the Rixian hegemony studied the data with professional interest. He had been right to pay attention to these humans. They fought like his own species, with cunning and ruthlessness. "They used our arrogance against us," Thane observed. "We sent a fleet designed to intimidate, not to fight. Large ships, minimal maneuverability, standard formations. We might as well have painted targets on our hulls." "What do you suggest, Commander?" Mortine asked. Thane's eyes gleamed. "I suggest we recognize that humanity is not a primitive species stumbling toward the stars. They are a warrior race that has survived millions of years on a death world. They have fought themselves, conquered their own planet, and developed weapons technology that rivals our own, just in different directions." "They still only have one planet," interjected the Vraxian ambassador. "We have thousands. We can assemble a fleet so large it will blot out their sun." "Yes," Thane agreed. "We could. But at what cost? The humans have shown they can destroy our ships. How many vessels are you willing to lose? How many of your people are you willing to sacrifice to subjugate one stubborn species?" Silence fell over the assembly. The Ascended Collective's representative spoke, its voice ancient and measured. "There is another consideration. We have operated under a fundamental assumption for millennia, that any species capable of spaceflight would follow a similar technological path. Fusion power, energy weapons, defensive shields. The humans have bypassed much of this. They weaponized kinetic energy and stealth. What else have they developed that we don't understand?" Admiral Kriven, attending the session from his damaged flagship, spoke up. "Intelligence suggests they've been preparing for contact for at least 3 years. They detected our long-range transmissions and have been studying us. They knew we would come. They knew we would be overconfident. Every aspect of their defense was designed specifically to counter our standard tactics." "Are you saying they're more intelligent than us?" The Kirene ambassador pulsed with indignation. "No," Kriven replied carefully. "I'm saying they're different. They think differently. They approach problems from angles we don't consider. It makes them unpredictable. Dangerous." Mortine raised his hand for order. "The question before us is simple. Do we escalate or negotiate?" "We cannot appear weak," the ThursdayCon ambassador insisted. "If one primitive species can defy us, others will follow. Our authority will crumble." "Authority built on fear is already weak," countered the Ascended representative. "Perhaps it is time to reconsider our approach to new species." The debate raged for hours. Some called for overwhelming force, fleets of thousands, weapons that could crack planets. Others urged caution, pointing out that the humans had only defended their home system. They hadn't attacked Council worlds or threatened the galactic order. Finally, Mortine called for a vote. All in favor of military escalation? 22 species voted yes. All in favor of diplomatic approach? 23 species voted yes. A razor-thin margin. Then it is decided, Mortine announced. We will send an ambassador, a real diplomat, not a military fleet, to negotiate with humanity. But we will also prepare. Commander Thane, I'm placing you in charge of assembling a strategic reserve. If negotiations fail, if the humans prove to be expansionist or aggressive, we will need a force capable of defeating them. Thane bowed his head. It will be done, Chancellor. But I recommend we study their tactics carefully. If we must fight them, we need to understand how they think. Meanwhile, aboard the Eternal Glory, Admiral Kreven received new orders. His damaged fleet was to remain at the edge of the human system, observing but not engaging. He was to document everything, every human ship movement, every communication, every technological detail. He studied the tactical display showing Earth's solar system. The human fleet near the moon had maintained their defensive posture throughout the engagement. They hadn't pursued his retreating ships. They hadn't gloated or made demands. They had simply defended their home and sent their message. Perhaps, Kreven thought, that was the most frightening thing about them. They had the power to destroy his fleet, but they had shown restraint. They killed only when threatened and stopped when the threat retreated. It suggested a level of discipline and strategic thinking that most species took centuries to develop. These humans had evolved it naturally. 3 months after the battle, an unmarked vessel approached Earth's solar system. It was small, unarmed, and broadcast peace on every frequency. This was the ship carrying Ambassador Lyra of the Ascended Collective, arguably the most respected diplomat in the galaxy. Lyra was old even by her species standards, over 3,000 years. She had negotiated the end of the Viker Wars, brokered peace between the Silicon Mines and the Organic Confederacy, and welcomed 60 species into the Galactic Council. If anyone could reach an understanding with humanity, it was her. General Stone received notification of her arrival in his command center. Single ship, minimal power signature, transmitting peace protocols. They want to talk. Let them come, Stone replied. But maintain alert status. This could be a trick. You think they'd sacrifice their best diplomat? Stone shrugged. I think they're desperate to understand us. That makes them unpredictable. The diplomatic meeting was held aboard the International Space Station, neutral territory that neither side could claim military advantage over. Ambassador Lyra materialized through a holographic projector, her crystalline form glowing softly in the station's dim lighting. Facing her was not just General Stone, but a delegation representing Earth's major nations. President Chin of the Pan-Asian Coalition, Prime Minister Okonkwo of the African Federation, Premier Volkov of the Russian Commonwealth, and President Martinez of the Americas Union. Thank you for meeting with me, Lyra began. Her voice was surprisingly warm, translated into each human language simultaneously. I come not with threats or demands but with questions. Ask them, President Chin replied. Why did you refuse our offer? We would have given you technology, knowledge, guidance. We would have accelerated your development by centuries. At what cost? Premier Volkov asked. Your own records show that protectorate species have no voice in council decisions. They are second-class members, subordinate to their patrons. We've fought too hard for our freedom to give it up to alien masters, no matter how benevolent. Lyra absorbed this. You understand that by refusing you've made yourselves targets? There are species in the council who see your defiance as a threat. General Stone leaned forward. Let me be clear, Ambassador. We don't want conflict with the council. We're not interested in conquering other worlds or building an empire. We only want to be left alone to develop at our own pace. But we will not subordinate ourselves to anyone. Even if it costs you everything? Especially then, Stone replied. Human history is full of examples of people who chose death over slavery. It's who we are. Lyra was silent for a long moment. Finally she spoke. I have studied your species since the battle. Your history is remarkable. You are the only known sapient species to evolve on a Class 4 death world. The human delegation exchanged glances. Death world? Your planet should not produce intelligent life, Lyra explained. The gravity is too high, requiring significant energy just to move. The atmosphere is corrosive, 21% oxygen, which is essentially a slow-acting poison that ages your cells. Your planet experiences regular ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts. Your moon is large enough to create tidal forces that shaped your oceans and weather into violent, unpredictable patterns. She paused. And then there are your diseases. Your viruses, bacteria, parasites. Most worlds have some microbial life but nothing like Earth. You exist in a constant state of biological warfare, your immune system's fighting battles every moment of your lives. President Martinez spoke up. I'm not sure what this has to do with everything, Lyra interrupted. Don't you see? Every other council species evolved on gentler worlds. We had time to develop philosophy, art, culture before we needed to develop weapons. We reached for the stars out of curiosity, not necessity. She gestured to the holographic display showing images of various alien homeworlds. Paradise planets with stable climates, gentle predators, and abundant resources. You reached for the stars to survive, Lyra continued. Your planet tried to kill you every day so you became harder, stronger, more adaptable. You didn't develop technology because you were curious. You developed it because you would die without it. General Stone nodded slowly. We're persistence hunters, Ambassador. We evolved by chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We survived ice ages by working together and planning ahead. We thrived by being too stubborn to die. Yes, Lyra said softly. And now you've brought that persistence to space. You built weapons from pure physics. You planned your defense for years. You hit us with everything you had and then stopped, showing both capability and restraint. What are you saying, Ambassador? Lyra's holographic form seemed to solidify, becoming more real. I'm saying the Council made a mistake. We tried to categorize you as primitives because your technology looks different from ours. But you're not primitive. You're specialized. You evolved in hell and learned to master it. President Chen leaned back. So what happens now? Now, Lyra replied, I convinced the Council to offer you a different arrangement. Not protectorate status but something new. Associate membership. You govern yourselves, develop at your own pace, but have access to Council trade and knowledge. You would have a voice, not a full vote yet, but representation. And if the Council refuses? Lyra's expression was grave. Then Commander Thane is preparing a fleet of 5,000 ships to sterilize your planet. The news hit Earth like a thunderbolt. 5,000 ships. The population watched the skies with new fear. Could humanity's tricks work twice? Could they defeat an enemy that now knew what they were capable of? General Stone didn't think so. The element of surprise is gone, he told the assembled military commanders. They'll expect kinetic weapons now. They'll use smaller, faster ships. They'll employ better sensor technology. We bloodied their nose, but if they come back, they'll come back ready. So we surrender? Asked Admiral Zhao of the Chinese Space Force. Hell no, Stone replied. We prepare. We innovate. We do what humans do best. We adapt. Dr. Sarah Chin, now head of the Advanced Weapons Division, stood before a holographic display showing Earth's solar system. We have advantages they still don't understand. We know our own system better than they ever will. And we have something they don't. What's that? Asked Commander Hayes, recently promoted for her role in the first battle. Desperation, Chin replied. They're fighting to preserve their authority. We're fighting for survival. There's a difference. Over the next 6 months, as Ambassador Lyra argued humanity's case before an increasingly divided galactic council, Earth transformed itself into a fortress. The asteroid belt became a minefield. Thousands of rocks were hollowed out and fitted with kinetic drivers and sensor packages. They looked like natural asteroids, but each one could accelerate to a fraction of light speed and ram into an enemy vessel. Mars was militarized. Underground facilities churned out weapons and ships. The red planet's moons, Phobos and Deimos, were converted into massive railgun platforms. Venus, with its crushing atmosphere and acid clouds, became humanity's greatest defensive asset. Ships were designed specifically to hide in the hellish environment, using the planet's natural conditions to mask their signatures. The moon became a shipyard, its minimal gravity perfect for constructing the massive vessels humanity was designing. These new ships weren't like the first generation. They incorporated lessons learned from studying captured alien technology and from humanity's own brutal experience. But the greatest innovation came from Dr. Yuki Tanaka, working with an international team of physicists. We've been thinking about this wrong, she explained to General Stone. The aliens have shields that can stop energy weapons. They have armor that can withstand conventional explosives. But everything has limits. She pulled up a simulation. What if we don't try to destroy their ships? What if we make it impossible for them to stay in our system? I'm listening. Solar flares, Tanaka said. Artificial ones. We place nuclear charges in specific configurations around the sun, detonate them in sequence, and we can trigger coronal mass ejections. Massive ones. We'd essentially weaponize our own star. Stone stared at the simulation. That would flood the inner system with radiation. Yes. But we can predict it and shield our forces. The aliens arriving from outside wouldn't know it was coming. Their ships are designed for combat, not for surviving the equivalent of a stellar storm. It would level the playing field. Or kill everyone. Tanaka nodded grimly. It's a last resort weapon. But if 5,000 ships come for us, we need every option. Meanwhile, in the Galactic Council, the debate had reached a fever pitch. The humans are militarizing their entire system, Commander Thane reported. Our long-range sensors detect massive construction projects. They're preparing for total war. Because we threaten them. Lyra shot back. You assembled a fleet of 5,000 ships and expected them to do nothing? We assembled that fleet because they attacked us. They defended themselves. They stopped firing when you retreated. That shows restraint, not aggression. High Chancellor Mortine raised his hand for silence. Ambassador Lyra, you have spent 6 months advocating for these humans. Tell us, do you believe they can be trusted? Lyra chose her words carefully. I believe they will do exactly what they say. They want to be left alone. They're not interested in conquest. But they will defend themselves with every weapon they possess. And they possess more than we initially realized. The ThursdayCon ambassador spoke up. We cannot set a precedent where species can simply refuse council authority. The order we've built over millennia will collapse. Then perhaps our order needs to change, the ascended representative countered. Perhaps forcing species into subordination is not the enlightened approach we believe it to be. Commander Thane stepped forward. May I propose a compromise? All eyes turned to him. Allow me to take a small fleet, 50 ships, back to the human system. Not to attack but to conduct war games. Let us test their defenses. Let them test ours. Whoever wins this contest gets their way. If we win, they accept associate membership. If they win, we leave them alone for 100 years to develop on their own. And if they refuse the contest? Mortine asked. Thane smiled coldly. Then we know they're afraid and we proceed with overwhelming force. The vote was close but the compromise passed. Commander Thane was authorized to return to Earth's system with 50 ships and a challenge. A war game that would determine humanity's fate. When General Stone received the transmission, he gathered his staff. They want to test us, he said. Prove we're worthy of being left alone. Can we win? Someone asked. Stone looked at the holographic display showing their defenses, their weapons, their people who had worked tirelessly for months. Yes, he said simply. Because we don't have a choice. Commander Thane's fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system exactly on schedule. 50 ships, all veterans, all equipped with the latest technology. They broadcast their challenge on all frequencies. Humans of Earth, Thane transmitted. We propose a contest. A simulated battle. Your entire defense fleet against our strike force. Non-lethal weapons only but full tactical engagement. If you win, the Council will grant you associate membership and leave you in peace for 1 century. If we win, you accept protectorate status. Do you accept? In the Cheyenne Mountain Command Center, General Stone studied the alien fleet. 50 ships. All smaller than the original contact fleet vessels, built for speed and maneuverability. Thane had learned from his mistakes. Do we trust them? President Chin asked. Non-lethal weapons? No, Stone replied. But we don't have to. Maintain full combat readiness. If they fire anything that looks lethal, we go loud for real. He opened a channel to Thane. We accept your challenge, Commander. But understand this, we will fight as if our lives depend on it. Because they do. I would expect nothing less, Thane replied. Shall we begin? The war game started with a probe. Thane sent 5 ships toward Mars, testing the human defenses. They encountered the first surprise almost immediately. The space around Mars wasn't empty. It was full of debris, microsatellites, and what appeared to be civilian traffic. Then the debris started shooting. Thousands of small defensive platforms, disguised as space junk, activated simultaneously. They fired marker rounds, projectiles that would register as hits on the alien ship's computers but cause no actual damage. 3 of the 5 alien ships were destroyed in the first 30 seconds. Thane watched from his flagship with growing respect. Clever. They've turned the entire orbital space into a defensive grid. Should we pull back? His tactical officer asked. No. Push forward. I want to see what else they've prepared. The alien fleet advanced in a coordinated pattern, moving toward Earth in 3 separate groups. Standard tactical doctrine: divide your forces to prevent a single devastating attack from crippling your entire fleet. Humanity responded with unexpected aggression. The human fleet didn't wait near the moon. Instead, ships accelerated out from hiding positions throughout the inner system. They came from behind Mercury, using the planet's gravity to slingshot themselves toward the alien fleet. They emerged from the hellish atmosphere of Venus, heat-resistant hulls glowing. They appeared from the asteroid belt, indistinguishable from the rocks until they fired their engines. Captain Hayes, commanding the Valkyrie, led a squadron of 20 stealth ships directly at Thane's command group. They maintained radio silence, communicating only through tight beam lasers that couldn't be intercepted. Remember, Hayes transmitted to her squadron, non-lethal rounds only unless they break the rules first. But make every shot count. The engagement turned into a 3-dimensional chess game played at orbital velocities. The aliens had superior shield technology and energy weapons. The humans had better knowledge of the terrain and more unpredictable tactics. Thane's ships fired simulated plasma bursts that, in real combat, would have vaporized human vessels. But the humans didn't fight like any species Thane had encountered. They used the planets as cover. They hid in radiation belts. They fired from extreme ranges and then disappeared before return fire could find them. They're not trying to win through superior firepower, Thane's tactical officer observed. They're trying to outlast us. Yes, Thane agreed. They're fighting a war of attrition. Every engagement costs us more than it costs them because this is their home. An hour into the war game, Thane had lost 18 ships to enemy fire. The humans had lost 32, but they kept coming. More ships appeared from hiding spots the aliens hadn't detected. Construction facilities on the moon were launching new vessels even as the battle continued. Then came the moment that changed everything. Dr. Tanaka, monitoring from Earth, gave the order. Activate solar protocol. In orbit around the sun, 60 nuclear devices detonated in a precise sequence. They'd been placed months ago, disguised as scientific satellites. The explosions weren't meant to destroy anything. They were meant to disturb. The sun's surface roiled. A massive coronal mass ejection erupted, exactly as calculated. A wall of radiation and charged particles began racing outward from the sun at millions of kilometers per hour. Alarms screamed across Thane's fleet. Commander. Massive solar event. Radiation levels increasing exponentially. Thane stared at the sensor data. They weaponized their own star. Sir, if we don't retreat to safe distance, our ship systems will be fried. The radiation will overwhelm our shields in less than an hour. But Thane noticed something crucial. The human ships weren't retreating. They were maintaining position, their formations unchanged. How are they surviving this? His science officer wondered. General Stone provided the answer via open transmission. Commander Thane, you asked to test our defenses. We've been living under this star our entire existence. We've been bathed in its radiation since we evolved. We built our ships to handle it. Did you? The implications were staggering. The humans hadn't just adapted to their death world, they'd learned to use its dangers as weapons. The radiation that would cripple alien ships was something human vessels were designed to withstand. Thane made a decision. Signal the fleet. Retreat to Neptune orbit. The war game is over. Sir? His tactical officer looked confused. We can still fight. No, Thane interrupted. We can't. If this were a real battle, we'd be forced to retreat or lose every ship. The humans have won. He opened a direct channel to General Stone. General, I concede the engagement. Your tactics were educational. Thank you, Commander, Stone replied. Does this mean? Wait, Thane interrupted. He was looking at something on his sensor display. Something that made his blood run cold. General, I need you to answer a question honestly. How many ships do you actually have? There was a pause. Then Stone replied, in this system? About 400 combat-ready vessels. No, Thane said quietly. I mean total. Including the ones you didn't show us. Another pause, longer this time. Commander, Stone finally said, I don't know what you're... I'm looking at drive signatures, Thane interrupted. Faint ones scattered throughout your outer system. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. Ships on low power waiting. You didn't commit your full force to this engagement, did you? The silence that followed was answer enough. Thane continued, his voice filled with a mixture of respect and horror. You've been building ships for 3 years. Not just the ones we can see. You've been hiding production facilities on every moon, every asteroid with sufficient mass. You've militarized your entire system and only showed us a fraction of your strength. Would you have done differently? Stone asked. No, Thane admitted. I would have done exactly the same. But it changes the calculation significantly. He closed the channel and addressed his bridge crew. Get me High Chancellor Mortine. Immediately. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of Thane's report. The commander's transmission had sent shockwaves through every member species. They have at least 2,000 combat vessels, Thane reported, his holographic form standing at the center of the council chamber. Possibly more. They've been hiding their true military capacity since first contact. 2,000. The Vraxian ambassador's voice was shrill with disbelief. In 3 years? That's impossible. It's not impossible when your entire species is mobilized for war, Thane replied. The humans aren't just defending their planet, they've turned their entire solar system into a fortress. Every asteroid is a potential weapon platform. Every moon is a military base. They've built infrastructure that would take most species decades to construct. Ambassador Lyra spoke up. Perhaps because they believed we would exterminate them if they didn't. We threatened them with 5,000 ships. They responded by building their own fleet. They responded by deceiving us, the Thursday Con ambassador countered. They hid their true strength. How can we trust a species that lies? How can they trust a species that threatened to sterilize their planet? Lyra shot back. High Chancellor Mortine raised his hand for silence. Commander Thane, your assessment. Can we defeat them militarily? Thane considered the question carefully. Yes. If we commit sufficient forces, perhaps 10,000 ships, and accept massive casualties. They've shown remarkable tactical innovation, but they're still limited by their industrial base and population. However, defeating them might not be possible without destroying their entire system. They've proven they'll weaponize anything, asteroids, solar radiation, even their own planet's harsh environment. Fighting them on their home ground, with their knowledge of every orbital mechanic and gravitational well, would be extraordinarily costly. And if we just leave them alone, asked the Ascended representative. Then in 20 years they'll have 10,000 ships, Thane said bluntly. In 50 years they'll be expanding beyond their system. In a century they might challenge the Council itself. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Are you saying they're a threat to the entire galactic order? Mortine asked. I'm saying they're the most dangerous species I've ever encountered, Thane replied. Not because they're more advanced than us, they're not. Not because they're more numerous, they're one planet among our thousands. But because they think differently. They see possibilities we don't consider. They weaponize concepts we thought were neutral. And they do it all with a level of strategic thinking that most species take millennia to develop. He paused, then continued. But I'm also saying something else. They don't want to conquer. They want to survive. Every action they've taken has been defensive. They didn't pursue my fleet after the first battle. They didn't attack our observers. They only fought when we came to their home with demands. That suggests they're rational, not expansionist. Ambassador Lyra seized on this. Then we offer them the associate membership. Give them time to develop. Establish trade relations. Learn from each other. And if they use that time to build an armada, the Thursday Con ambassador demanded. Then we'll deal with that when it happens, Lyra replied. But I believe they won't. Do you know what I learned in my months studying humanity? They have a concept called mutually assured destruction. They developed nuclear weapons and could have annihilated themselves, but they chose restraint. They created doctrines and treaties to prevent their own extinction. That's not the behavior of a species that wants to conquer. It's the behavior of a species that wants to survive. In the back of the chamber, a new voice spoke. It was the representative of the Silicon Minds, a species of artificial intelligences that rarely participated in council debates. We have run simulations, the Silicon Mind announced, its voice a perfect mathematical harmony. 1 million scenarios of humanity's development over the next 1,000 years. In 73% of outcomes, humanity becomes a major galactic power. In 61%, they do so peacefully through trade and diplomacy. In only 12% do they become actively hostile. And in those 12%, someone asked, they are responding to aggression from other species, specifically from us. The data suggests that humanity's future behavior will be determined largely by how we treat them now. Mortine absorbed this information. The Silicon minds were rarely wrong in their predictions. Then we have a choice. We can fight a war that will cost thousands of ships and millions of lives, against an enemy that may not be an enemy at all. Or we can extend the hand of friendship and hope they grasp it. Hope. The Vraxian ambassador scoffed. You would bet the future of the Council on hope? No, Mortine replied. I would bet it on probability and self-interest. The humans want to trade, to learn, to grow. We can facilitate that and gain a potentially powerful ally. Or we can create an enemy that will resist us for generations. The vote was called. It was closer than any vote in Council history. But by a margin of just 3 species, the decision was made. The Galactic Council would offer humanity associate membership, full diplomatic relations, access to trade networks and knowledge databases. The humans would govern themselves, develop at their own pace, and have a voice in Council matters. In return, humanity would agree not to expand beyond their solar system for 25 years without Council approval. They would allow Council observers to monitor their development. And they would participate in the greater galactic community as partners, not subjects. Ambassador Lyra was chosen to deliver the news personally. Ambassador Lyra returned to Earth's orbit aboard the same unmarked vessel she'd used before. This time, however, she carried with her something unprecedented in Galactic Council history, a treaty drafted specifically for one species, acknowledging their sovereignty and strength. The meeting was held in the same place as before, aboard the International Space Station. But the atmosphere was different now. The human delegation arrived with the confidence of victors, though they were careful not to show arrogance. General Stone, President Chin, and the other leaders sat across from Lyra's holographic form. Between them, a holographic document floated, the proposed treaty written in both human languages and Council standard. The Council has voted to offer you associate membership, Lyra began. You will have full diplomatic recognition, access to our trade networks, and a voice in Council debates. You will govern yourselves without interference. In exchange for? Stone asked. A moratorium on expansion beyond your solar system for 25 years. Allowance of Council observers to remain in your outer system. And participation in the Galactic Trade Compact, which means opening your markets to alien goods and vice versa. President Chin studied the holographic document. 25 years is a long time, Ambassador. We have plans for colonization missions to nearby stars. The Council is aware, Lyra replied. But they need assurance that humanity won't immediately begin building an empire. 25 years gives everyone time to learn about each other. After that period, the restrictions lift and you're free to expand like any other species. And the observers? Premier Volkov asked. What exactly will they be observing? Military developments primarily, Lyra admitted. The Council wants to ensure you're not building weapons that could threaten other species. It's a security measure. For their security or ours? Stone challenged. Both, Lyra said honestly. Some Council members still fear you. This war game you conducted proved you're more capable than anyone imagined. There are species calling for preemptive action. The observers are meant to provide transparency, to prove you're not preparing for conquest. Dr. Sarah Chin, now also serving as science advisor to the Earth Defense Initiative, spoke up. We've reviewed the trade agreements. There's a technology exchange provision. What exactly are you offering? Lyra manipulated the hologram, bringing up a new section. Medical technology that could extend human lifespans by decades. Fusion reactor designs more efficient than anything you currently possess. Agricultural techniques that could feed billions. Educational materials covering mathematics, physics, engineering, 10,000 years of accumulated knowledge. That's generous, Chin observed. What's the catch? The catch is that you'll be introduced to technologies in stages. The Council doesn't want to disrupt your cultural development. Some species who received too much too fast lost their identity, became copies of their benefactors. We want to avoid that. So you'll decide what we're ready for? President Martinez asked, an edge to his voice. A joint committee will decide, Lyra corrected. Half human representatives, half Council. Nothing gets released without mutual agreement. The human delegation exchanged looks. They'd prepared for this negotiation for weeks, wargamed every possible scenario. Now the moment of decision had arrived. We need to discuss this privately, Stone said. Of course. Lyra's hologram faded, leaving the humans alone. The debate was intense. Some argued they should reject the offer entirely, that any restriction on human expansion was unacceptable. Others pointed out that 25 years of preparation with access to alien technology would make humanity far stronger when the restrictions lifted. Finally, President Chin spoke. We're thinking about this wrong. The Council sees this as them granting us privileges. But we won the war game. We proved we can defend ourselves. We have leverage. What are you suggesting? Stone asked. Counteroffer. We accept the trade agreement and the observers. But we won't agree to a moratorium on expansion. Instead, we'll agree to notify the Council before any colonization mission and allow Council representatives to join those missions. That gives them transparency without stopping our growth. They'll never accept that, Volkov said. Maybe, Chin replied. But if they want peace, they'll negotiate. And if they want war, well, we're ready for that too. When Lyra returned, Stone presented their counteroffer. The ambassador's crystalline form flickered with surprise. You're asking for significant concessions, Lyra said carefully. We're offering significant cooperation, Stone countered. Ambassador, be honest with us. Does the Council want peace or control? Lyra was silent for a long moment. There are factions within the Council, General. Some want peace. Some want control. Some want you eliminated entirely. I'm trying to navigate between these positions to find a solution everyone can accept. Then take our offer back to them, Chin said. Make them understand that we're not asking for permission to exist. We're offering partnership. There's a difference. And if they refuse? Stone's expression hardened. Then we continue developing on our own. We'll expand when we're ready. And if anyone tries to stop us, we'll defend ourselves. We've proven we can do that. That path leads to war, Lyra warned. Maybe, Stone agreed. But slavery also leads to war, just slower. We'd rather fight for our freedom than surrender it peacefully. Lyra departed with humanity's counteroffer. As her ship left Earth's orbit, she transmitted a personal message to High Chancellor Mortine. The humans won't submit, she reported. They'll negotiate, but they won't surrender their sovereignty. We can have them as partners or enemies, but not as subjects. Mortine's response came hours later. Convene an emergency session. The Council must decide. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in chaos when humanity's counteroffer was presented. 47 species, representing thousands of worlds, shouted over each other in a cacophony of alien languages. Unacceptable, the ThursdayCon ambassador bellowed. They dictate terms to us? A single planet species. They beat our war game, the ascended representative pointed out calmly. Perhaps we should consider their terms seriously. This sets a dangerous precedent, the Vraxian ambassador argued. If humanity can refuse our standard protocols, other species will demand the same treatment. High Chancellor Mortine watched the chaos with growing concern. In 10,000 years of Council history, they had never faced a situation like this. Every species before humanity had either submitted gratefully to Council guidance or been technologically inferior enough that their opinions didn't matter. But humanity was different. They had the technology to defend themselves, the strategic brilliance to use it effectively, and the stubborn pride to refuse subjugation. It was a combination that broke all the Council's established patterns. Commander Thane stood and waited for silence. When the chamber finally quieted, he spoke. I've fought the humans twice now. Once in actual combat, once in simulated war games. I've studied their tactics, their strategies, their psychology. And I've reached a conclusion. Every eye in the chamber fixed on him. We cannot conquer them, Thane said bluntly. Not without destroying ourselves in the process. Yes, we could assemble enough ships to crack their planet. But they would make us pay for every meter of space. They've proven they can inflict massive casualties even with inferior technology. And they're improving rapidly. So we just give them what they want? The ThursdayCon ambassador demanded. No, Thane replied. We recognize reality. They're not asking for special treatment. They're asking for the same rights we grant to full Council members, the right to self-governance and expansion. They're simply asking for it earlier than our protocols normally allow. The Silicon Mind representative activated its holographic form. We have updated our simulations based on humanity's counteroffer. The probability of peaceful coexistence increases to 89% if we accept their terms. The probability of prolonged conflict increases to 73% if we refuse. Those are just numbers, the Vraxian ambassador scoffed. They don't account for Council pride, for our authority. Pride is not a logical basis for policy, the Silicon Mind interrupted. Authority without the ability to enforce it is meaningless. The humans have demonstrated they can resist our enforcement. Therefore, our authority over them is already compromised. We can either acknowledge this gracefully or learn it through bloodshed. Ambassador Lyra rose to speak. I have spent more time with humanity than anyone in this chamber. I have studied their history, their culture, their values. Let me tell you what I've learned. She manipulated a holographic display, showing images from human history. Ancient battles. World wars. Nuclear standoffs. This species has fought itself for its entire existence. They know war intimately. They've perfected it, suffered from it, learned from it. And eventually they learned to prevent it. They created international laws, mutual defense treaties, global organizations. Not because they stopped being warriors, but because they realized cooperation served them better than conflict. She changed the display to show the International Space Station, humanity's various nations working together. They're offering us the same thing now. Cooperation. They don't want to conquer the galaxy. They want to explore it, trade with it, learn from it. But they won't do it on their knees. Would any of us? The question hung in the air. The ascended representative spoke, its ancient voice carrying weight. I remember when the Kareen first encountered the Council. They too refused our standard protocols. They demanded recognition as equals. We denied them. The war that followed lasted 40 years and cost millions of lives on both sides. Eventually, we granted them what they asked for initially. We could have avoided all that suffering with early compromise. The Kareen didn't have weapons like the humans, someone pointed out. No, the Ascended agreed. Which makes the lesson even more relevant. If we fought the Kareen for 40 years over pride, how long would we fight the humans? And at what cost? High Chancellor Mortine made his decision. We will vote on humanity's counteroffer. But first, I want to hear from every species. This decision will shape the Council's future. Speak now, all who wish to be heard. What followed was hours of debate. Some species argued for acceptance, seeing potential in human innovation and perspective. Others demanded rejection, fearing the loss of Council authority. Still others proposed compromises, accept some terms, modify others. Finally, as the station's chronometer marked the 20th hour of continuous session, Mortine called for the vote. All in favor of accepting humanity's counteroffer as written? 23 species voted yes. All in favor of rejecting the offer and maintaining original terms? 22 species voted yes. 2 species abstained. The chamber fell silent. 23 to 22. The narrowest possible margin. The motion passes, Mortine announced. Humanity will be granted associate membership on their own terms. Ambassador Lyra, you will return to Earth and finalize the treaty. But before Lyra could respond, a new transmission arrived. It came from outside the Council chamber, from a region of space that should have been empty. It was the Rixian hegemony. And they had an announcement to make. The transmission filled every screen in the Council chamber. Overlord Kroth of the Rixian hegemony appeared, his scarred features twisted into what might have been a smile. Greetings, Galactic Council, Kroth said, his voice dripping with contempt. We have watched your debates with great interest. Your endless discussions, your democratic votes, your weakness disguised as diplomacy. High Chancellor Mortine's crystalline form hardened. Overlord Kroth, the hegemony signed the Galactic Compact. You agreed to abide by Council decisions regarding first contact protocols. We signed a document, Kroth replied. Words on digital paper. But the hegemony recognizes only one true law, power. And we have observed that humanity possesses something valuable. Technology. Innovation. Strategic thinking that rivals our own. We want it. Commander Thane stepped forward, his expression grave. Kroth, what have you done? What you lack the courage to do, Commander? We have dispatched a battle fleet to Earth's solar system. 1,000 ships, all hegemony vessels, all prepared to take what the Council was too timid to claim. The Council chamber exploded in outrage. Accusations flew. The Thursday Con demanded immediate sanctions. The Ascended called for military intervention. The Kareen representative pulsed with colors indicating extreme agitation. This is a violation of the compact. Mortine declared. The hegemony will face consequences. Will we? Kroth interrupted. Your own debates prove the Council is paralyzed by indecision. By the time you vote on sanctions, agree on terms, and assemble a response fleet, we will have conquered the human system. We will take their technology, study their innovations, and incorporate their strategic methods into our own military doctrine. And the humans? Ambassador Lyra asked quietly. What will you do with them? Kroth's smile widened. Those who submit will be allowed to serve the hegemony. Those who resist will be eliminated. It's quite simple really. We are offering them the same choice the council offered, but we're honest about the consequences of refusal. The transmission ended. The council chamber descended into chaos. Some species demanded immediate action. Others argued that intervening would mean war with the hegemony, something no one wanted. Still others quietly calculated whether allowing the hegemony to test themselves against humanity might actually serve council interests. We must warn the humans, Lyra insisted. The hegemony fleet is likely already in their system, Thane observed, studying tactical displays. Our long-range sensors show a massive hyperspace distortion near Earth. They must have been positioning for this move for weeks. On Earth, alarms screamed across every defense installation simultaneously. General Stone burst into the Cheyenne Mountain Command Center, where displays showed a nightmare scenario. 1,000 ships had just emerged from hyperspace at the outer edge of the solar system, near Neptune's orbit. They were arranged in assault formations, already advancing toward the inner planets. Sound general quarters across all installations, Stone ordered. Recall all ships to defensive positions. And get me Admiral Zhao, Commander Hayes, and Dr. Chin immediately. Within minutes, the core military leadership was assembled via holographic conference. 1,000 ships, Admiral Zhao said grimly. That's double what we prepared for. Even with our hidden reserves, we're looking at 3-to-1 odds. Can we win? President Chin asked, joining the conference from the Situation Room in Geneva. Stone studied the tactical display. The hegemony fleet was moving in a standard invasion pattern. Vanguard, main body, and reserve. Professional, disciplined, overwhelming. In a straight fight? No, Stone admitted. But we don't do straight fights. Commander Hayes spoke up from her ship, the Valkyrie. General, we've been tracking these ships. They're bigger than council vessels, more heavily armed. But they're also running hotter. Their engines are putting out massive energy signatures. They're not trying to be stealthy. Because they don't think they need to be, Dr. Chin observed. They think we're primitives who'll either surrender or die quickly. A transmission came through from the hegemony fleet. Overlord Krotha's scarred face filled the screens. Humans of Earth, Krotha announced. I am Overlord Kroth of the Rixian hegemony. You are surrounded by 1,000 warships. You cannot win. You cannot escape. Surrender immediately, and we will allow your species to continue existing as workers in the hegemony. Resist, and we will eliminate every human in this system. You have 1 hour to decide. The transmission ended. Stone looked at his assembled staff. Opinions? We fight, Admiral Zhao said immediately. We fight, Hayes agreed. We fight, Dr. Chin confirmed. President Chin spoke from Geneva. The world governments are in emergency session. But I think I can speak for all of them when I say that humanity doesn't surrender. Not to the Council. Not to the hegemony. Not to anyone. Stone nodded. Then we fight. Dr. Chin, what's the status of Project Prometheus? Dr. Tanaka's face appeared on screen, joining the conference from a hidden facility on Mars. 97% ready. We could activate now if necessary. What's Project Prometheus? President Chin asked. Something we hoped we'd never have to use, Stone replied. Dr. Tanaka explained. Tanaka pulled up technical schematics. When we first detected alien transmissions 3 years ago, we considered worst-case scenarios. What if a species came that we couldn't negotiate with? What if they wanted to exterminate us? We needed a deterrent, something so devastating that even a superior force would think twice about attacking us. The schematic showed a complex network of devices positioned throughout the solar system. Project Prometheus is a series of stellar compression charges positioned in strategic locations around the Sun. If activated in the correct sequence, they would destabilize the solar fusion process. The result would be a premature nova event. The Sun would expand rapidly, consuming the inner planets and releasing enough radiation to fry every ship within several light hours. Silence filled the command center. You'd destroy Earth? President Chin said, horrified. Kill everyone? We'd kill everyone in the system, Stone corrected. Including the hegemony fleet. It's a doomsday weapon. If we can't win, neither can they. Mutually assured destruction on a stellar scale. That's insane, someone whispered. That's survival, Stone replied coldly. If the hegemony thinks they can casually exterminate humanity without consequences, they're wrong. We'll take them with us. Admiral Zhao studied the tactical display. General, we don't need to use Prometheus. We just need to let them know it exists. Stone smiled grimly. Exactly. Commander Hayes, transmit the following message to Overlord Croth. Overlord Croth sat on the bridge of his flagship, the Devastator, watching displays that showed Earth's pathetic defense fleet scrambling into position. 200 visible vessels against his 1,000. The outcome was inevitable. Then a transmission arrived. Not from some governmental leader begging for mercy, but from a human military commander named Stone. Overlord Croth, Stone's image appeared on the view screen. You've made a mistake. You assumed we were primitives who would surrender or die easily. Let me correct that assumption. Croth leaned forward, amused. Are you surrendering human? No, Stone replied. I'm explaining why you're going to withdraw immediately. Laughter rippled through the Devastator's bridge. These humans had spirit, Croth had to admit. Foolish but spirited. 3 years ago, Stone continued, we detected your council's transmissions. We knew first contact was inevitable. So we prepared. We built weapons. We trained our forces. But we also built something else. Insurance. The transmission changed, showing technical schematics. Croth's science officer studied them, then gasped. Overlord, those are stellar compression charges. If those specifications are accurate. What? Croth demanded. They've rigged their own star to explode. Stone's voice continued. Project Prometheus is active and armed. If your fleet attacks Earth, if you attempt to board our stations or land on our planet, we will activate the sequence. The sun will go nova. Earth will be destroyed. But so will your entire fleet. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon you brought here will be vaporized in seconds. Croth stared at the schematics. You're bluffing. No species would destroy their own world. Humans would, Stone replied simply. We have a saying, give me liberty or give me death. We've fought wars of extinction before. We've faced enemies who offered us survival as slaves. We chose death instead. Every single time. He leaned closer to the camera. You have a choice, Overlord. You can retreat now and report to your masters that humanity is too dangerous to conquer. Or you can attack and we'll all die together in nuclear fire. But understand this. If you choose to attack, history will remember you as the fool who lost 1,000 ships and gained nothing. Croth's tactical officer spoke up nervously. Overlord, our sensors are detecting unusual energy patterns around their star. Multiple points, arranged in a geometric pattern. If they're telling the truth. Scan those positions, Croth ordered. Full spectrum analysis. Minutes passed. The science officer's expression grew increasingly worried. Overlord, I'm detecting quantum resonance signatures consistent with stellar compression technology. I can't confirm they're real without getting closer, but the energy readings are concerning. Croth considered his options. He had 1,000 ships. He could overwhelm Earth's defenses. But if the humans actually triggered their doomsday weapon, he would lose everything. The hegemony didn't tolerate failure, and returning with news that an entire fleet was destroyed would mean his own execution. But if he retreated without even testing the humans' resolve, he would appear weak. Prepare to engage, Croth ordered. Target their orbital stations. Let's see if they have the courage to destroy their own world. As his fleet advanced, Stone watched from Cheyenne Mountain. Around him his staff was tense. Dr. Tanaka had her hand hovering over the Prometheus activation controls. They're not stopping, Admiral Zhao reported. Hold steady, Stone commanded. Wait for my order. The hegemony fleet crossed into the asteroid belt. Their weapons powered up. Targeting solutions locked onto human installations. Stone opened a direct channel to Overlord Croth. Last chance, Croth. Turn back or we all die. Croth smiled coldly. You won't do it. No species would commit suicide just to spite an enemy. You really don't understand humans at all, Stone replied. He turned to Dr. Tanaka. Begin activation sequence. Phase 1. Around the sun, the Prometheus devices powered up. Energy readings spiked. The star's surface began to ripple, responding to the quantum manipulation. On the Devastator, alarms screamed. Overlord. The star's photosphere is becoming unstable. They're actually doing it. Croth watched as sensor data showed the sun beginning to expand. Just slightly, but the trend was clear. The humans weren't bluffing. For the first time in his military career, Croth felt something he'd rarely experienced. Fear. These primitives were actually willing to destroy themselves rather than submit. They would rather burn than bow. He had encountered many species in his conquests. Some fought bravely. Some surrendered quickly. But none had ever threatened mutual annihilation with such calm certainty. All ships, Kroth said quietly. Halt advance. His bridge officers stared at him in disbelief. Overlord? His second-in-command questioned. I said halt. Kroth roared. He opened a channel to Stone. Stop the sequence. We're withdrawing. Stone nodded to Dr. Tanaka, who immediately began the shutdown procedure. The sun's surface slowly stabilized. A wise decision, Overlord, Stone said. But Kroth wasn't finished. You've won this encounter, human. But understand that you've also created an enemy. The hegemony will remember this day.